Okay.
Our village was surrounded by mountains all around, lovely mountains. And our grandfather loved the forest, and he took us on Sundays for walks into the forest and we watched the deer and the moose, something like a moose. It was called Hirsch in Germany. It had big horns, and in the fall they were calling the hirsch, the male hirsch was calling the female. I remember that, and we heard that through the whole village. And grandfather and one of his uncle who could play the trumpet very beautiful, very often went to one of the top of the mountains and blew from down there whatever piece of music, and that was heard in the whole village and loved. Our grandfather Friese was known, he was the conductor of the male choir, the conductor of the wind instrument. He had a big group of musicians who came to our farmhouse because it was a big place and a big kitchen, and they rehearsed their music there, which is my total fondest memory. We loved grandfather, and everyone loved him everywhere in the village because he was one of the most unusual, always helpful guys, always cheerful, and a very special person. And I still have a write-up of his life. When he died, they never had seen a bigger funeral. They came from all around the whole area and gave him the last honor. So he was really, truly a special man. And another great memory, I loved him. When I was 12, I was allowed to milk a cow the first time, and we sat on a little schemel, had a pail between our legs, and milked the cows, which was really most peaceful, and I still hear the milk going into those pails. And in our cow stable we had little windows up on top, and the swallows all the time from the spring to the falls, the swallows flew in and out, breeding, laying eggs, and later on feeding their little children. And I still see those all little swallow heads with open beaks coming out, and they made this chirpy, lovely noise when the mother came flying in with flies continuously. And my cousin, who was 6 years older than I am, we took this opportunity when we milked the cows and were singing all the old folk songs we had learned from grandfather and from our mother, who was also a great singer. And I could make a second voice to every song, and my cousin, she had a lovely soprano. So very often people just came, listened, and came especially to our house to listen to our singing. And we did that every night, all the songs over and over again, or new ones. And I wish I could do that once more. It was most beautiful, most beautiful. And they say the cows gave more milk because of our singing. And I wouldn't doubt it.
It's probably true.
Yeah.
So.
And of course, Christmas, winter, unforgettable. We had mountains going right up behind. Our fields went up on a mountain, and we could go sledding. We had a big sled, 5 girls, children fit on it, and we went as soon as we could. Our village was under 1 meter or 2 meters snow very often, everything frozen, and couldn't go to the outhouse. We had to shovel away in the morning, or we had to go into the cow stable to do our business, because outhouse was all frozen and too cold. So, but when we were children, my sister and I, we could also sing very beautiful, and even 4 weeks before Christmas, we had a little, a small little place and gang where we disappeared, my sister and I, with a candle burning, and practiced already Christmas songs as good as we could every day, and looked forward to Christmas. So we really celebrated Advent, and then winter came and snow came, and we were just so excited that Christmas is coming. And we had in this big old farmhouse, we had 5 windows and a corner bench and a big old wooden table where the family sat all together every day around. And we had, of course, breakfast, lunch and supper all together. It was never heard of that someone went off and ate by themselves, what is happening right now. And we all sat together and talked what the day was like and what we were going to do and what happened in school and so on. It was really a sharing of experiences from day to day, and it was wonderful in itself. But on Christmas Day, the 24th of December, our big old farm kitchen, it had wooden floors, were scrubbed, totally spotless, clean, everything cleaned, and at noon everything was cleaned. But a Vater and the horses and a wagon and we kids went this morning out into the forest, which was our forest, and chose the biggest and nicest Christmas tree we could find, freshly cut. And we brought it in.
Only on the 24th?
Only on the 24th. And at noon, when the Christmas tree was in, Vater put it in this old stand and brought it into the old farm kitchen. It was from down right up to the ceiling always. And it was the nicest grown tree ever, by far the best you could even imagine. And then we kids could all help decorating it. And we had always the same bulbs which were glistening and had designs in, and we put real candles on the tree, and it was every Christmas like a miracle seeing this incredible tree which was right in our farm kitchen with a tile stove across from it. And in the afternoon we all went to our old big church with the church bells ringing through the whole little village, and snow under our feet, and everything was just fantastic. And we all had a candle, a burning candle in front of us in the church. Everyone who was in the church and everyone in the family who could sing was singing in the special choir, and that was just magic in itself. And then we went back home, and at home my sister and a few other kids went to our neighbor Avenarius, and in front of their house did sing Christmas songs, because they didn't have children and a family, and they were always delighted hearing us singing, and then ask us into the house to sing more. And then we always got some cookies from them, which was for us absolutely beautiful, because we never got cookies otherwise, and wished us a happy Christmas. That was part of Christmas. And then we went home, and our cows and pigs and horses all got special food on Christmas Eve, and we all wished all animals a happy Christmas too. Then we went, when all the animals were taken care of and had all their food, we had a very special, every Christmas, a special dinner which was called Schlesisches Himmelreich. And no one can make it anymore, and no one makes it anymore, but that was every Christmas a special dinner. And after dishes were done, we were sitting around the table on this bench and listening with one ear whether we heard footsteps outside, because we knew Santa Claus or der Weihnachtsmann was not going to pass us up, but coming to bring us some presents. And so we were told we have to sing very loud Christmas songs so he can hear us and know we are still there. So we were sitting, Anneliese and Trautel and I and Muttel, all on this bench and singing Christmas songs, having all the candles lit on this big, big tree. And after a little while, we surely heard outside big steps and big chains clattering. And then we heard eine Rute, which is what's eine Rute?
A stick, a whip?
Something like a broomstick, banging on the window, on one window, on all 5 windows, because the Santa Weihnachtsmann went around all the windows, and then we heard the outer big door opening. And
were you all terrified?
And we were electrified. We didn't dare moving, but we had to keep singing so he could hear us. And then we heard the long hallway outside, which were solid stones, big, big steps coming in closer and closer until this big, big Rute banged on our door to our farm kitchen. And we still kept singing, and then the door opened, and in this door frame stood this huge Santa Claus with a big sack on his back. And he came into the door, and we were just mesmerized, total mesmerized, and then he came closer and he asked my mother and Tante Anna whether we were good children this year or bad, and so they said we were mainly good, of whatever stories he had to hear, whatever we did, good or bad. And sometimes he said we should not do that anymore and scolded us, and sometimes he praised us. But then he said could we say a prayer for him, and we always had prayers ready, and we had to pray for him, and we had to sing for him more songs. And he stood there with a huge beard and a huge hat on, and just a huge fur coat. It was just matching.
Was it red or no, just a
red
fur? Oh, it was red, yeah.
Yes, and some straw around, a straw belt out of straw around his belly. I remember that too. And then he opened his big sack, and we just and he had little parcels with names on, and we each got some presents, but just we were always amazed that we got some presents, because we knew no one had money or anything, but we always got some presents. And of course, in the olden days, we believed this was a real Santa who came from heaven, from down, and then...
Oh, you weren't told about the North Pole?
No.
You didn't know about that? Oh,
no.
okay.
Came from heaven as a Christkind from God, and then he stayed for a while and praised us, and said we should be good, and if we are good, he will come back next year and see us again. And then he left, and when we opened those little presents, which were sometimes, we were happy for every little thing, because it was one sweater, or my sister a sweater, or a doll we got together, because mother couldn't afford two dolls for us. We had to share, or once we got one pair of skis, which we also had to share. And I remember once he did bring a bicycle in, but the bicycle was for my mother a present, and we had to share all that with my mother, and that was an incredible present. We never expected anything like that.
And you have no idea who it was to this day?
Oh yeah.
Who played Santa?
Oh yeah, later on we knew who that was, a very, very... sometimes it was Vater. Our father, who was a big tall guy, and he changed his voice. And sometimes it was one of our helpers on the farm, who was also very big, and they could all act very well. They acted wonderfully. And but one day, when we were bigger, and that puzzled me. Next morning, now after Santa was gone, we still had goodies and did sing, and the family sat together and talked and passed and so on. And that was the Heilige Abend. That was very special. And next morning, on Christmas Day, I went upstairs and I saw over the railing the total costume of Santa Claus hanging there. And that made me wonder about Santa very much. I remember that.
Funny.
So, that was
On the 6th, though, you always had to put out your shoes, right?
Oh,
On
6
December
was
6th.
St. Niklaus. That was the helper. 6, not out the shoes. St. Niklaus came through the village. He knocked on the door, and he brought us just some little things like nuts and marzipan and a little bit of chocolate.
So that fellow was St. Nicholas, but...
St. Niklaus was outside on the road, and he had a whip too. And if he could, he hit you. We knew that when we were bad, we got hit by St. Niklaus quite often. And we were scared of him, very much so. But later, when I was bigger, 14, 15, I played St. Niklaus too, and scared the other kids, yeah.
That's funny.
Yeah, yeah. So that was a magic Christmas for us.
Yes, sounds like it.
Yeah, winter was very special in our village, and Father had to go with the horses, and the snow plow had to be pulled with 6 or 8 horses sometimes, and Father always was part of the team to keep the street free of snow and to go to school. Otherwise, or sometimes...
Was he paid for that? The city pay him?
No, I don't think so. I don't think so.
For that service?
Sometimes there was so much snow, the snowplow couldn't even get through, so all villagers were asked to come out with shovels. Each one from their house, right and left, had to shovel the streets free by hand, because there was too much for the horses and snowplow to go through. I remember that. And that was great fun, because all village people were out shoveling the streets free.
All working together.
A combined effort.
Cute, yes.
Fun?
That's very cute.
Yeah. It was, brought the village together.
And you went berry picking in the forest, right?
Oh yeah.
You found
blueberries, wild blueberries, but strawberries and raspberries. But that was, took hours and hours before we had a liter full of berries, and it was something very precious and very special to eat, because we didn't have
it was hard
any.
to find. And so Opa, though, how did he die?
Oh my God. Oh, Papa got 80 years old, and his 80th birthday, I remember, was on the 12th or 13th of March. There was still snow in our village, and the whole kitchen was all emptied out, most furniture, and because it was a huge festival. Early in the morning at 8 o'clock, I remember that, the choir boys, the men choir came in front of the house, bringing him ein Ständchen. That was done for special people, especially Opapa, who, as I say, was the conductor of all that. Then they were all asked in for coffee and breakfast, and that's when the celebration started. And they were just about gone when all the wind instrument people, the so-called, how do you call them?
The brass ensemble?
The brass ensemble came,
Yeah.
and they brought him ein Ständchen, his music, and they were called in. And from there on it was in and out of people, and at lunch was a big banquet with, I don't know how many people. The whole house was full, and to give us kids a break. So our show, we had a helper on the farm, and he put the sled on and the horses, and all the grandchildren were there. He drove us to an outing to a different beautiful place. I remember that the bells were ringing on the horses. It was still winter time, and so, and afterwards was, of course, in the evening later, dance in our big old kitchen. There was real music played to the dance, and so that was grandfather's last 80th birthday. And one Sunday after that, his son came down, and then grandfather went out to the road and wanted to go across to his cousin to ask him over for coffee, and didn't hear a car coming, and a car just ran him over, and he fell down, and they brought him in unconscious, and he never woke up, and a few hours later he was dead. Just a few days after his 80th birthday. And there was a shock for everybody, a great shock, and I remember my sister and I, we climbed under the table because everyone was crying, and we knew something very horrible happened. And
How old were you then?
we were just going to be 6.
Oh.
Yeah, just still 5. That was in March, and we were 6 in July. And then that was dreadful.
And his wife, how much longer did she live?
Oh, she lived much longer. She survived the end of the war and being chased out from house and hof. So she lived much longer, yeah. But that was a great shock, and life changed quite a bit, because when grandfather was dead, my grandmother, who loved us so much, and we were like her children, and she was like our guardian angel. Nothing ever could hurt us in her presence, surely not. And she gave her heart for us, for my sister and me. And she moved away to her other daughter, and we lost her. So that was a very great change for us. Because,
so then it was just Herman, Muttel, and
my
you
mother
four?
was still on the farm, and Herman, our uncle, we called him Vater, because father, we didn't have a real father, and his wife we called Aunt, Tante Anna. And we knew deep down Tante Anna didn't really want us on this farm. We knew that very much, and to counteract that, mother loved us so much more, but there was always this conflict. Tante Anna never liked us, and we knew that, and we never loved Tante Anna. We had to put up with her, but really love, no, it was not there. But yeah, that was the situation.
Yeah. Did she get along with Mutzel, you think, or were they kind of not very...
Sometimes Mutter had a tough position. She had us two and didn't know where to go, and she found a job, a day job, and when she came home very tired, she still had to work on the farm and in the stores and help with the animals, and she paid Tante Anna some money for the food we ate, and so I only found that out later.
Even though you worked on the farm and
yeah,
yeah.
Even so.
Did you know anything about your father?
Nothing.
Any information at all?
He just disappeared.
Did you know his name?
After 6 he disappeared.
What was his name, do you know?
His name was Karger. Friedrich Karger.
Karger. And where did he come from?
Oh, next village. My mother and the two sisters were most happy, cheerful, pretty good-looking girls. And wherever they went, they brought life and happiness into a dull group of people. So they were loved everywhere they went to. So they went to the next village, always dancing on weekends, Saturdays. They loved dancing, and that's where my mother met our father. So they went there quite a few weeks, and I guess they must have, our mother, and then she was young, 22 or 23, and so the inevitable happened. And we were born.
Did she ask him to marry her?
I couldn't tell you that.
You don't know, or
I
he just ran off?
She knew. No, he wouldn't. He wouldn't marry. He was a merchant and came from a much sort of hierarchy, a higher family, and they wouldn't marry a farmer's daughter. They were snobs, actually, so I have been told. Later on, when we were 4 or 5, some of our far relatives took us to girls and brought us to his brother, to the next village, hoping that they would like us and most likely give us some money too, because but they just looked at us. I remember that one. We were dragged into this house of this so-called uncle of ours, and they totally ignored us. They literally ignored us and said, "Look, pass off, we don't want to have anything to do with you." So I remember that one faintly. But I was very small then.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they were really snobs.
Oh well.
Never heard anything.
So it goes.
So that happened to many girls.
Yeah.
They were made pregnant and the guys disappeared. They had their fun and just disappeared.
And lots of the girls hung themselves, right?
Yes, unfortunately.
Had that happened in your village?
The girls were kind of looked down on, of course, and very often shamed by the rest of the villagers, and not accepted or laughed at, and so the girls were desperate, very desperate, unfortunately.
And so the church, was it a Lutheran church?
Lutheran church, yeah.
And what was the pastor, minister, priest like?
What he was like?
Yeah.
Oh, our whole family was very respected. The pastor was very much looked up on as a respected.
Was he a kindly guy though, or was he a strict,
very
stern?
Kind. No, he was nice. He was kind and nice, and we had to go to Konfirmandenunterricht for 2 years. Learned all about the Bible, which I never took serious at all. But our family had a place with a name tag in the church. We were one of the old families in the village. Of course, everyone knew everybody in the village, and everyone also helped everyone when necessary. And the church, yeah, we were a group of people who were closer friends, who were the circle, and pastor was one of us. I remember the pastor was at least a few times a year invited to us for supper, and that was always special, and there were always special food made because the pastor was there, and he was looked upon as a very special person. But then later on they found out the pastor, this particular pastor Mahler, had affairs with the young girls.
Oh,
and
same typical story.
That became known, and then he had to disappear, and he did. His whole family, he had a beautiful wife and daughter, and they were all had to leave because that story was known, and the whole village people were bitterly disappointed and disillusioned with this pastor.
Same old story with priests.
Absolutely,
always.
Yeah. Same. But we had one other special person in our village, which was, his name was Johannes Maximilian Affinarius, and I, like you, actually I have some wonderful art pieces which should be worth something. He was a professor, an artist, a writer, and a very, very good painter, and a very good friend of Gerhard Hauptmann, who was in all Germany well-known poet and writer. And Gerhard Hauptmann came sometimes to our village to visit Affinarius. They were friends, and he also came onto our farm because he wanted to meet our father, who was a special guy, and see our old Schlesisches farmhouse. So I remember we met, we were small, we just stared at him because it was said, this person is so famous, everyone knows him. His name is Gerhard Hauptmann, and you can't even, we just stared at him as someone out of this world, maybe from heaven. But Affinarius was almost our neighbor across a meadow, and we spent lots of time in this family because they were friends with our family, and we learned a lot of art because his wife and he both were artists, and they taught us painting and art and basically culture, and so they played a very important role in our village, but especially in our family. Vater met with Affinarius quite often, and they came in and out all the time.
Yeah. Did Fasel play music too?
Oh yeah, the trumpet.
And he was in the
Absolutely.
band and all that?
Pardon?
He was in the band, the village
Yes,
band?
he was also in a band.
What were they called?
Pictures. Die Hoffmannsche Kapelle. Not the Friesische. But I have pictures of all that.
All right.
Lovely pictures.
And so how
In
did
our-
life change when Hitler came into power?
Pardon?
How did life change on the farm when Hitler came to power?
It actually did change because our barns were old. It was raining in. The roofs partly needed to be replaced. Our whole barns, the whole straw barn was very old.
Well, actually, we'll back up a little because just before it was such a bad recession in Germany.
Oh,
So did you notice any effects of
no,
that?
I was
Or you were too young
small.
to realize
I
what
was
was happening?
20, I was only 5 when Hitler
Okay,
came
you would have
to
been
power, but I've
too
been
young.
told nobody had in the village work. People were in the greatest poverty. There was no work, there was inflation, and a loaf of bread was 2,000 mark, and the next day it was 3,000 mark. no one could afford anything anymore. People were starving, dreadful, and it couldn't go on. And that was because of the First World War. The peace treaty was so hard for the Germans. They wanted the Germans never to be big and strong, and so the peace treaty was drawn up in such a way that Germany was totally finished, totally on their knees. And so there came the time, so I've been told, where people went to Wahl, to an election.
Oh yeah, to vote, yeah.
Voting, and there were the communists and there were the nationalists, and of course there was a guy, Hitler, who promised everyone if they vote for him, he will give the Germans work again and schooling, and will get the economy strong again, very similar to what happened over and over in history. And of course that's exactly what Germany needed most. People wanted work, and people wanted again to be at least able to live and buy food and have a job. And so that's how Hitler came to power. And father again, and I remember that, 4 weeks after Hitler was in power, it only took 4 weeks when many people all of a sudden had jobs again, had money, could buy things, and that continued so rapidly that they all thought a miracle has happened. It was like a miracle. And a year later, we had no money and no one borrowed. All the farmers got, because Hitler thought the farmers produce and produce food for the people they need help most, and they gave us without any interest money to rebuild all the barns, and we ripped down a whole barn. The straw barn was ripped totally down, I remember, and built a new barn, and then the roof on the main building was also renewed, which was before all impossible. So work was created by building things, cleaning things, building the autobahn, and so anyway, I remember everyone thought it was a great miracle. And everyone was, for a few years, extremely impressed and happy. Except grandfather never liked Hitler. He thought he has too big of a mouth and is screaming too much. He loved very much Kaiser Wilhelm. He was very loyal to the Kaiser house, but he didn't want to have anything to do with Hitler. I remember that very much.
Yeah.
But Vater was impressed. Everyone else was incredibly impressed, including us. 2 kids. We were given clothes free because we had little money, and we were sent to camps, to the ocean, to a resort for holidays, because we couldn't afford it, and there was a series that everyone is entitled to have a holiday once in a while, and not just the rich ones. And those were actually all positive, good things. And we met once a week. Of course, there was the BDM-Bund Deutsche Mädchen, were singing, and theater and sport was encouraged, and it was an incredible comradeship amongst us girls, which I absolutely loved. We were there for each other, we did things together, we made each other happy, and that was actually incredibly great. I've never ever experienced such a great comradeship, truly. Everyone was
Is that when you gave secret Christmas
encouraged.
presents to one person
Yeah,
in
you
that
put
club?
the name of a person who didn't know, was all names were put in
Yeah.
a box, and the name you pulled, you had to do something nice every day to this person without possibly letting this person know where
Oh,
this
every
came
day.
from. Pardon?
That was all year? You did that?
Now we did that. We did that as long as, yes, this group was together.
Was
Yeah.
was that like part of the Hitler Youth then?
Yes,
that
was
group?
part of it. Like,
I see.
yeah, was making each other happy, surprises, helping with anything you could think of,
Hmm.
or giving little presents, or shining their shoes, or something like that.
Hmm. And how old were you then when the World War II started?
Oh boy, that that was very strange, and it still puzzles me, because it only happened once, as long as I lived in the village, one evening in the fall, 1939, just a few days before the war was declared. We went out in the evening and we saw the whole sky in the distance, red, 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 and the red increased as darker as it went, the more red was on the sky. And father went looking and he said, oh, in this next village there must be a huge fire. And he belonged to the Feuerwehr, my father, and he could drive the Feuerwehr truck, and he said, I have to go and help fighting this fire. It's got to be a huge fire there. So he went and tried to drive in the direction where this red sky was. And then he came back and he said, look, there's no fire. It's something which happened, miracle in nature, that the sky is that red. Never happened before. The whole villagers went out and looked at this dark, dark red sky. And after a while it went away. And so I remember the villagers said, that is a very bad omen. That means there's going to be a lot of bloodshed coming. And a few days later, the war was declared, and everyone in the village was very depressed, because father was in a war and everyone knew what war meant. And everyone was just deeply, deeply disturbed, because no one wanted the war, and they all shook their head and said, it's absolutely horrible, it's awful, it's terrible what's happening. And everyone was full of fear, full of fear. And of course in a few days already all the young boys in the village disappeared. They were all drafted. There were fewer and fewer men left, and we were so lucky our father didn't get drafted, but many, many got drafted. And it didn't take long when in the first family you heard the mother weeping, bitterly crying. I remember, and I still know her name, when her son, she got the news, was killed. And though it went every week, someone in the village got the news that they were killed, held tot for Germany, and there was nothing but great mourning, great horror, and yeah, great sadness. Right?
Yeah.
But we still had Christmas, I don't know if we should stop now. Christmas was marching too, and that stayed marching in our place.
Even during the war.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And do you remember seeing, you mentioned you saw boxcars full of Jewish people being carted off?
We didn't have any Jewish people in our village, period.
Yeah.
But later on, that wasn't in the beginning of the war at all.
Yeah.
In the beginning, they were not touched. Apparently, the story goes, and there are lots of stories circulating, that Hitler said he didn't want the Jews, he wanted to take their belongings away, belongs to Germany, and the Jews were exploiting most people for their own gain, and I don't know where this hatred came from, and he offered all the Jews to leave Germany, but apparently England and America didn't want all the Jewish people either, so they didn't really know where to go. I had nothing to do with it, but I only heard stories. But much later, I think that was 1944 or 43, 44, through our village came a big, long, how do you say, a colonne, you know, where they all...
A freight train?
Pardon me?
A freight train?
No, not freight train. They were walking on the road.
Oh, okay.
A huge line of people, and right and left were German soldiers with guns who guarded them. They were all came through our village, and I remember I went out, our father also went out. We wanted to give them water and something to drink and to eat. And as far as I remember, that's kind of fishy. We were not allowed to do that, but I know we went out with water. We tried to help them because father was totally appalled and not happy to see it. And those were all men, and they had all a uniform on. It was very sad faces, I remember that. And not too far from us, maybe 7 kilometers, was a big prison, you could say. It was enclosed barracks where those people were all brought in there and housed. Yeah. And they looked very sad. I remember that one for sure. And they were from that place, es hieß das Judenlager. They had to go every morning to the next little town, which was Friedland, and work in factories. And at night they were brought back in a colonne, marched back into this thing which was all fenced. Now they couldn't escape anywhere. Anyway, there was nowhere to escape to. But how many survived, how much food they got there, they must have gotten some food because they had to work all day in these factories. I don't know, but when the war ended, of course they were free. I know that they came to our farm for food and for help, and I remember that.